Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Women of the Bible Wednesday. I hope that you've been having a good week. Today, autumn begins, so happy fall. Often in life, it's not the easiest of times, but the hardest that can bring out the best in people. Today, we are looking at a woman whose life is a powerful reflection of this very truth. Her name is Abigail, and she is the only woman in the Hebrew Bible who is described as both intelligent and beautiful. Her story is told in 1 Samuel 25, where we find David on the run from King Saul, who is trying to kill him. And so because of that, David returns with his men to the wilderness and his old line of work, protecting shepherds and their animals from marauding bands of thieves, as well as protecting landowners from thugs and bloodthirsty land grabbers. In return, David expects loyalty, money, food, and a place to camp with his 600 men. One of those wealthy landowners is a guy named Nabal, who just happens to be Abigail's husband. Respectful of his stature, David sends 10 of his men to politely ask for food, pointing out that no harm has come to Nabal's shepherds or sheep, and the request seems simple enough. However, rather than give them food, Nabal explodes. Just who is this David? Who is his father? Why should I give him food? Enraged at his arrogance and ungratefulness, David straps on his sword and orders 400 men to accompany him to go and kill Nabal and his household. However, one of Nabal's servants reaches Abigail first and tells her what's happening. Knowing what her husband's like, she springs into action, grabbing 200 loaves of bread, 200 cakes of figs, and a bunch of other mouth-watering provisions. She loads the donkeys and sets out to meet David before he reaches Nabal. Now, just for a minute, think of the courage that took. Abigail lived at a time and place when women weren't respected or listened to. And here she is heading out to meet the man who wants to kill her, her husband, and their whole household. And when she reaches David, she pleads with him to forgive her husband, telling David he's a spiteful and malicious man who basically acted like a jerk, and that had she been there to hear David's request, she would have filled their saddlebags. And she begs for mercy, even telling David that she knows he's fighting God's battles and that there is no evil in him and that he is indeed the Prince of Israel. And she reminds David of how good God has treated him and asks him to show the same treatment to them. And, amazingly, Abigail's words calm David, and he orders his men to stand down. Abigail goes home, but because Nabal is so drunk, she says nothing that night. The next morning, when he's sober, he learns what his arrogance toward David almost cost them. Hearing it, Nabal turns white as a sheet and suffers what appears to be the first official heart attack in the Bible. However, he manages to stay alive for 10 days, and then God strikes him dead. When David hears about what happened, he sends his servants to collect Abigail so he can marry her. Of course, he could have just taken her by force if he wanted to. But her response leads us to believe she is thrilled, or at least sees it as her best option, which it is, because with Nabal's death, she became a childless widow, and we know what that means for these first century women. Grateful as always, and graceful as always, she rides out to join him with 5 of her maids. Eventually, Abigail and David have a child of who nothing more is known. And it's there where her story pretty much ends too. But here's the thing, Abigail, she was a class act. Through her quick thinking and diplomacy, along with the gifts of food, she was able to resolve what could have been a bloody crisis. See, rather than hiding or cowering, Abigail moved forward towards the danger, knowing that God was surely with her, and doing so, she saved her household. Now, Abigail had the courage and strength to shoulder the blame for something she didn't do. She begged forgiveness on behalf of her entire household, and God used that moment to show David how wrong it would be to take revenge and kill these innocent people. Obviously, she must have heard the stories of David, that Saul was pursuing him, how he had used just a slingshot to kill the giant Goliath. And so she spoke in such a way to bring him back to God's bigger picture for him. That's pretty awesome, don't you think? In fact, this was a pivotal moment for Abigail, because she had no idea how David would respond. But still, she chose to look beyond herself and do the right thing. And we see that no matter how difficult or threatening the situation, God is able to use any of us, even those who feel insignificant or powerless, for his greater good. And because of that, she is forever remembered as a woman of grace and diplomacy. Now, my friends, please continue staying safe. Wear a mask when necessary and get vaccinated. If you haven't done so already, please do it and encourage others to do the same. Always stay positive and hopeful. Know that I love you, and so does God. I'll be praying for you. I'll see you soon. Bless you.